Welcome to episode 2 of Home Cooking with Foodland. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us last week. The response was really great, and it was really fun watching, everyone's cooking and all the posts of the dishes that you folks made and put them on Instagram. We're hoping to do the same this week. We're gonna have a fun time doing this dish, and I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone's versions of the dish. And I'm interested to see in the comment section all the different variations that everyone's gonna do. So without further ado, we'll get started. Oh, one more thing. Just want to mention that if you have questions, please use the Q&A function. And we have Cheryl, who's moderating, of course, at a safe 6-foot distance from me. Getting started with the dish tonight, we're going to be doing Thai larb. And larb really is a minced meat salad because it has a lot of vegetables and herbs in it. And there are a lot of different versions that are made. The one that I'm going to make tonight is going to be made with ground turkey. So we'll get started. The first thing we're going to do is get an onion prepped. And in the comments or in the ingredient list I said red onion or shallots both work fine. They just give different nuances and flavor. Shallots are much milder and they're delicious. And if you've not played with one, you should. It's a great flavor. I'm going to use an onion because I figured many of you might have one at home. And I like the red, it gives a little bit nice color. I'm gonna use half of an onion for this. So for this one, I'm gonna cut the ends off both sides. And I'm gonna cut it down the center here. And I'm gonna cut it very, very thin again. Okay, and I'm going with the grain. When I get to the end here, I'm going to push the onion back down, so I'm starting with the curve again. Now, if you like onions, you guys can leave them like that. But what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to turn the onions sideways just a little bit because they're a little long. And I'm just going to take my knife and just run it down so I have a little bit shorter pieces. So that's the piece. That's what we're going to use for the onion. And I have this Chinese cleaver. I do use it for things. But I really like it because it's also a great scraper. Just pick it all up, put all my onions in here. Now I have a pan that is heating up. It's on low right now. I'm gonna turn around quickly and turn it on a little bit hotter so that it's ready when we're getting ready to go in there. 2 garlic cloves. Go ahead and cut this hard stem off. There's 1 stem there, 2. And there's lots of different ways you can go ahead and cut this and make it. But what I like to do is I'll just take my cleaver and I'll just kind of push down. I'm sure a lot of you folks do this way. We'll do this one here. I'll be a little bit more gentle. And then once we've sort of started that process, then we're going to come in here and just quickly mince it. By the way, this is pre-peeled garlic. It's fresh pre-peeled garlic, and I really like to use that because it gives you the, the benefits of fresh garlic without all the headache of having to peel them, and you have all these different sized cloves and all that stuff. So I think that's one of those things that you really make a big difference if you're gonna really elevate your cooking and you want to make a commitment or a transition, and you're using the bottled garlic. Maybe you want to move to using the pre-peeled cloves, and I think you'll see a big difference in the cooking. It's just a much cleaner, more vibrant garlic flavor you're going to get. So I'm going to take this and add it to my onions here. And then we're going to go ahead with the lemongrass. I have lemongrass here. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. Don't use it, but I thought I'd show you how to use it. It's interesting, really fragrant, has a very citrus smell. And the thing is, it is edible, and you can do it more than just using it for flavoring stocks. The thing you want to do is you're looking for the most tender pieces of this stalk. And so this piece here, as you can see, is very grassy, but it's very fragrant. And so you could save this, like we talked about making stocks. Technically, like these ends here would be great for making stock. So I'll put those over there, and then I'm going to use my other knife here. I'm going to cut the other hard stalk off the back, and then I'm just going to kind of peel away because I'm looking for very, very, very tender pieces of this lemongrass.
Can you explain your different knives and why you used one to
Yeah,
cut
I mean, so the different knives I use are for different applications. I have, this is a chef knife and I use it for just about all of my utility work. This one's more for smashing, heavy cuts. I actually do some spicy work because it really works well. But the weight's good for cutting through bones, chicken bones and things like that.
What do you call that one?
This one here?
Yeah.
It's a Chinese cleaver.
Oh, okay.
Chinatown, $10. And then this is a utility knife. I use this as a paring knife and a utility knife, but it's great for like fine work. And it just depends. As over time, you start figuring out what knife works better for which application. But the knife that is used most is going to be this knife that I have here. This is the chef knife. So here are the tender pieces. And what I'm going to do now is I really want to finely mince this, because that's also going to help when it goes into the dish, when you're eating it, you won't have big fibrous pieces. So I'm just very, very finely mincing this. There are other things that people do. It is if they're going to make stocks and sauces, they'll cut the lemongrass into bigger pieces, bruise it all up, smash it. Then you can extract all the flavor, and then they just take it out. But in this application, I'm going to leave it in, and I cut it so fine that it's just going to add to the dish, and it will be part of the eating experience. It'll give it just a little bit of texture. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start getting all of our meat going.
Explain what kind of pan you're using.
Okay, so the pan that I'm going to be using, and you could use a wok if you have it at home, but in general, I'm looking for a pan. You could use saute pan or different sides. I'm using one that's wider and higher, so, or has a little bit of height so I can move it around. But also, I'm using a pan with a very thick bottom. And the kind of pan that you're going to want to look for when you're doing a lot of cooking to get a better cooking experience is a pan that has some weight on it. That weight is going to give you a better heat distribution. And when you cook, it's also going to retain the heat better so that it doesn't just cool off the pan and all of a sudden your food's just sweating, okay? So I'm using peanut oil, high neutral flavored, high smoking point. And then I put a thin layer in the pan. If you can look at here, and one of the things that we're going to talk about a lot is when do you know when to put the meat in the pan. So as I shake this, we talked a little about last time, but you see those little ripples there? When it starts to ripple, it's telling you that it's pretty good, it's close. And then the next indicator that I look for when I'm doing this kind of cooking is very light wisps of smoke that come up. Now, if you're not sure, this is your first time, you want to just double check, you can take some of the meat and throw it in and listen for it, and you're hearing that. Okay? So now this is 1.5 pounds of ground turkey meat. So it's 1 tray and a half. If you go to the store, they come in a 1 pound increment. We're going to put this in now.
Other turkey, like chicken, or
pork. So, traditionally, by the way, you hear that sizzle, right? So, traditionally, larb is made with a lot of different things. It's made with ground pork. It can be, I'm making turkey here. You can make it with chicken. You can also make it with other things like ground. There's recipes that they're using things like duck, so darker meat. So it's you can use fish, you can use ground fish. So there's a lot of different things you can use. You can also use non-meat options too. Someone was asking about tofu. You can. I would look for something that's really firm, but you'd have to be very gentle with it so it doesn't turn to a very broken up mush, right? Another fun thing that you could do is use ground mushrooms. You want something that's kind of hearty and meaty. And there's just a lot of like meat options, non-meat options that are available now. Seitan, tempeh, different things that you can use to get a similar dish, but a non-meat alternative. So now I have this in here, and what's going to happen now, one thing that I'm trying to do is I want to brown this. So what you're seeing now is as soon as it went in the pan, the moisture started to come out and it dropped the temperature of the pan. So what I want to do now is I'm going to let the moisture come out and it's going to sort of steam and cook, but I still want this to lightly brown. And I need to get all the moisture to cook up first before it browns. Now, what I am going to do at this time though, is put in those aromatics that I pre-prepped, because as this is reducing, they will very gently cook throughout the meat as it's starting to brown. Now, or starting to reduce the moisture. Now I am going to try to break it up because you know part of the appeal of the dish is the small little pieces of meat that are in this. We're calling it a salad, right? Meat salad. But you can start to smell the meatiness and the reduction of the juices that are happening. And then once I get most of the big pieces broken down, then I'm gonna go ahead and add in the vegetables that I pre-prepped.
Joy wants to know if larb is a Thai word.
It is a Thai word. It's spelled a couple. I mean, I've seen it spelled Larb. I've also seen it spelled Laap. And I'm sure all the people there that are Thai are listening to me butcher the word, so I apologize. But it's in recipes, it's Larb. I've seen it, and I've also seen it Laap. Okay, so here we have the onions, our garlic, and our lemongrass. I'm gonna put that in, stir it in. I'm gonna stir this in. Again, what I'm trying to do now is I'm letting the onions cook down gently instead of using very, very high heat. And I'm starting to let the flavors come together. So I'm going to let this cook now and reduce while we go back and do some prep. And then I'll come back and check it every so often. And then Cheryl's also gonna listen to this with me. And if she starts to hear it sizzle, she'll say, hey, come check out your larb. It's browning, okay? So now that we have, let me take care of this real quick. We have that going. I want to start prepping some of the herbs that are going to go into the dish at the end. So I have basil here. Now you can use, classically it should be Thai basil, but this is the basil that I had. And you know, like we've talked about in cooking, the key is to use what you have and don't be afraid to make substitutions as long as you're, you know, the substitution makes sense and it makes the dish still delicious. So I'm eyeballing this. That's 2 sprigs. I'm going to put 3 in. Today feels like kind of like a 3 sprig version that I want to make. And the way that you want to work with this is you want to take the leaves and kind of line them up and bunch them nicely. And then you're going to take them and kind of get them in your hand and roll them all up. And that's where you start with. I'm actually going to turn them a little bit so that's a little bit tighter. And then you're going to take your knife here. When I was working on this recipe, I did a bunch of research and also consulted with a good friend of the family, or friends of the family, the Cloves, and they kind of walked me through their version and made sure that I was doing this right. So shout out to Helen and Navy. Okay, so we have mint next. I'm gonna take those and I'm just gonna pull them off here. Pull the sprigs off. And one thing I want to show you is, okay, I left this piece on here and you can leave it on because it's very tender. Lots of places you find any restaurants would take them off, but for our kind of rustic cooking, this is flavor, it's not woody, and you'll be fine. Same thing here, you're gonna kind of roll it all up to a nice little tight, compact ball. And just go in there with your knife. And again, I mean, if you're just starting out and knife skills are something that you need to get used to, then you know it's okay to just roll them all up together like that, and take your knife and just go through like that. But one thing that's really important is this knife is very sharp, and you want to work with a very sharp knife. Mint is very delicate, so is basil. And if you're using a very dull knife, what will happen is you're just going to bruise the herbs, and they'll just turn black on you. So we got basil, we've got mint. Now we're gonna go with cilantro. I feel like that's about right. Now one thing as I'm cooking, I'm listening and I'm starting to hear a sizzling sound. Let's go take a look at what's going on here. And if you can hear it now. You can hear a sizzling sound. Before it was a kind of a wet, watery, bubbling sound. Now you're starting to, the volume is starting to come up, starting to get louder. And what's gonna start to happen now, I think you can hear that already, right? You're hearing that the sauteing sound, and that's what I'm looking for. Because what's going to start to happen now is you're going to lightly brown the meat, and by browning the meat, you're adding flavor, you're caramelizing, right? And so you're taking the proteins and the sugars that are in the proteins, and you're doing what's called the Maillard reaction, and that's the thing that happens that really gives you that browniness and flavor. Okay.
What heat did you have it on that whole time?
I had it on 6.
Which
That's
is
medium.
high?
Yeah, it's
Medium
medium high. Yeah.
The whole
So
time?
the whole time it's been medium high. And what's going to happen right now is as it's getting hotter, if it starts to get really hot, then I'll turn the heat down a little bit. Okay. Note about cilantro or Chinese parsley, we call it here, right? Same thing. When you're working with this part here, a lot of people will take it off and throw it away. Now, if you're using this for garnish, great. But this here, again, is considered a tender herb. So the thing you want to do is you want to use it.
Can you use dry herbs like dry basil?
Okay. In my opinion, when you're making a dish like this, part of what makes the dish delicious and special is the fresh herbs. I'll be right back. So you can use dry herbs if that's what you want and if that's all you have, but you're gonna end up with a distinctly different dish. And the reason why I'm moving this off the heat right now because I'm happy with that, but I'm not quite done with my herbs. The reason why I'm saying to use fresh is because the fresh gives a certain greenness, a certain vibrancy, and all of the essential oils are still in there. When you're working with dried, you lose some of that. And I guess I would say it's like the difference between using fresh shiitake mushrooms versus dried shiitake mushrooms, and you get a different experience altogether. So that's ready. That's actually ready, but I'm not ready, so I'm gonna hurry up here. Limes. We're gonna juice these limes now. What I want to show you when you're juicing limes, if you've never juiced a lime before, or maybe you've never done this particular thing that I'm saying to do is take the lime down and you want to go like that because you want to really kind of like mush it up and bruise the inside and really break down the fibers because that will help get the maximum amount of juice out. For that recipe, I'm going to use 1.5 limes. So I'm going to take 2 limes. I'm going to roll this up. And I think you'll see a big difference in the amount of juice that I'm going to get out. Let's see. Cut this in half. And you can squeeze them. Forget one of those juicer things, but this is a tool that I really think is worth getting. It's just a juicer, but watch how much juice I can get out of this using this. Squeezing that, but I see how much the difference that you get of how much more juice you get out from rolling that, just to kind of get all of the, what do you call those little pulp things inside, get them all loosened up so that all the juice can come out. That's 2. I'm gonna go 1 more. And then we'll go ahead and squeeze that. Okay.
Can you remind us if you season the meat?
I did not season. We're gonna go over there for a quick. I'm gonna add this stuff in now. So I did not season. The only thing that's in here right now is the meat. And you see how it's starting to brown here, and that's flavor. Now on the bottom of the pan here, it's also starting to stick a little bit, which is fine. It's okay. What's gonna happen is I'm gonna add the lime juice, and you hear that sound? That's kind of helping loosen up all the stuff that's on the bottom. Okay, and I did not season it because I'm seasoning with the lime. So think about the fresh herb that's gonna go in there, the brightness in the lime that's gonna go in there. For this recipe, I'm gonna use 2 tablespoons of fish sauce. And normally I eyeball it, but I just wanted, because I'm showing you, I wanted you to see that I am actually putting, this is what 2 tablespoons is in. And this is when we're talking about, am I seasoning it? Now I'm seasoning it because there's nice salt in that. Shoyu, you don't have to put it in, but I'm gonna put a little bit in there. And then the recipe calls for sugar. This is also to taste. I don't like to put a huge amount, so I'm gonna put a heaping teaspoon in there, okay? And I'm using brown sugar because I like the additional flavor that it adds. Now, if you have regular sugar, that's fine. If you have light sugar, that's fine. If you have agave, that's fine too. But think about, one thing that you wanna think about when you're cooking, and what I like to think about is, I'm trying to layer flavor, right? So I'm layering in the acid. I'm layering in a little bit of sugar to balance the acidity, and there's a lot of umami that just went in here.
Can you use lemon instead of lime?
You can, if you have, if that's all you have, you can, but you're just you're end up with a little bit of a different experience. I mean, one thing that's really cool is if you want to do like a little bit of lemon and a little bit of lime, and so you kind of have a sort of a yuzu-esque thing going on. So, you know, you can experiment, but the classic one is to use the limes, and has a, hard to describe, I can't describe the lime the liminess of it relative to the lemoniness of it. And now we're gonna put the herbs in. I'm gonna put, gotta save some for garnish. I'm gonna put all this in right now. And then we're gonna stir it. And this is the other thing. If you were here, and you know, when I figure out how to get the smell to come through the camera to you folks, I think you'd see the difference of why I would say to use fresh versus dry. I mean, you can smell the very fresh, vibrant basil, mint, cilantro going on in here with the lime. And so it's very, very delicious, kind of fresh smelling dish. Now this is ready to go now. I'm gonna leave it here to stay warm. We'll come back in, we'll start getting all the rest of the components ready. And by the way, I did not put green onions in there. So I'm going to cut some real quickly. These are from the yard. Again, I like to, you know, I will let them, when I buy some from the store, I let them dry out, I save the roots, and then I plant them. And, you know, it's a fun way to keep that going a little bit longer. But we're just gonna go and slice these.
Can you remind us, you added 1 heaping teaspoon of brown sugar.
Correct, 1 heaping teaspoon of brown sugar.
And if you substitute it with a different kind of sweetener, like agave you mentioned, would you use the same amount? I would use the same amount. The sweetness level, I would say they're all relative. The difference is the nuances of flavor that they're adding. And again, I'm starting with that teaspoon. When you make the dish, and one of the things that I highly recommend when you're cooking is when you make it, then you taste some, and then you adjust it to your preferences. And you know, when you're starting out, eventually you'll know exactly how you like it, and you can just eyeball it. When you're starting out, you're always better putting a little bit less because you can always add a little bit. The last thing you want to do is make the dish and then it's too sweet. You know, it's overpowering. Okay, so now we're gonna start working on the garnishes for the plate. So this is cabbage. You know, a lot of restaurants will just, if you go to the restaurant, you get the cabbage and it's just a big, or slices on there, and you can eat it with, and a lot of texture. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna quarter this, cut out the core, here, and then I am going to take what I'm trying to do is take this tiny section out in the middle here, where you couldn't really make a cup with, and I'll cut those down, and you can eat that as part of or with the larb. But then I'll take these pieces here, and I will kind of separate them. And by doing so, I've created a few cups using the cabbage, which I think are kind of fun. Do you know if there are variations to this dish where you can add in other ingredients to the protein, like rice, for example?
Well, classically, there's toasted rice that goes in the dish, and I decided not to put it in because it's another step, and you can do it. Again, it adds flavor, complexity, but you know, I don't typically have toasted ground rice that I use for other things, and so I'm assuming that, you know, if you don't do this kind of cooking all the time, you might not have it. And I think this is a dish that can be really made quickly when you get home and you want to eat right away. So I guess you could make it and it would be great, but I also want you to know that you could also do it without it, and you would also have a delicious dish. So here's the cabbage piece. Now I did get some, this is red leaf. And for those of you that do want to make another style of wrap, you can use these. And I'm just taking the top halves off because these are the more tender, beautiful pieces. What I would do here now is, you know, when you're done with this, all these other pieces here are still perfectly edible. I would take those and cut them up, make a salad with that, or put it into into a sandwich. So you're using everything, but you're using the pieces that you want specifically for this dish. Now we have a Japanese cucumber, and what I'm gonna do is just stripe it really quickly. It looks pretty, but I think the other thing it does is it changes the texture when you're eating the cucumber. And the difference that's gonna have is you're gonna have great cucumber flavor, but sometimes the skin can be a little tough, right? And so it still adds, you still have some skin, but then at the same time, it's not too tough. There's a little texture, but not too much texture. Now, I cut the ends off. Cut the ends off here. You can use English cucumbers. I like Japanese cucumbers because I think they're a little bit more tender. And when you look inside here, there's a lot less seed, and the seed is more tender as well. If I was doing the larger English cucumber, I would cut it down the center, and I would even scoop out the seeds just because sometimes I think it has too much. So we're gonna go ahead and slice these on a bias.
A viewer wants to know if you wanted to make this fancier, you could substitute, for example, crushed shrimp chips in place of the toasted rice.
You could totally do it, and you know, I would say that is I'm very much looking forward to seeing your picture on Instagram because it sounds super delicious, and you're adding character to it. It's kind of like, you know, the other thing you could add onto this that I don't have would be like, you could add fried shallots to it as a garnish or fried garlic. There's a lot of ways you can go it, but I like the idea of the shrimp chips because you're adding, you know, you're building on flavor, you're layering on the flavor profile that's already in the dish. So here we go. We're gonna add some. I'm gonna add cucumbers. And what's great about this dish, as you can see, right, is in this particular example, I'm using a very lean protein. I have very little sugar in there. And look at all the vegetables we're putting there. It's a ton of vegetables. Now I'm gonna take some cilantro here that we didn't use up. I'm gonna put some here for those that want more. I'm gonna take some of this mint for those that want more. And then I'm gonna take this lime because I know there's some people out there that just really, really love lime. And I think that lime really adds so much character to the dish. So I'm gonna actually put more on this.
Can you remind us how much shoyu you?
Yeah, I put exactly 3/4 of a teaspoon. I'm just kidding. It was about a teaspoon.
Of
that was
shoyu?
an eyeball. I'll show you. Yes, I did not measure that. That was an eyeball. It was a 1-second pour.
And what if you don't have Japanese cucumber?
Use whatever cucumber you can get, or don't use them at all. Don't let that stop you. But you have the regular, just the regular ones, that the local kind, the English cucumbers. You can use those. I'd stripe them more, cut them down the long way, scoop out the seeds, and use that. Or you can use a hot house cucumber. That would work well too. So that's our garnishes, and we're kind of almost close to wrapping this up. So I'm gonna show this. I'm gonna bring the larb out, and you'll see everything together. But if there are any other questions, this is the perfect time to ask. By the way, when you make the larb, if you like it spicy, you know, you can add sriracha up front, or you can add chili flakes or chili powder. I didn't do it because I'm trying to make this kid friendly, and you know, not everyone likes spicy, and you can always punch up the spice on your own. Okay.
So if I love lime so much,
yes,
can I zest the lime and add that to the dish?
You can. I've not done that, but that is a perfectly good use of a lime, and that's 100% use of a lime. Here we go. So here's the larb. And you know, just like I said, if you had some fried shallots, that'd be great. If you had the toasted rice powder, that'd be great to put on there right now. I am going to punch it up with more herbs though. We'll put this down here. And then the last thing I'm gonna bring out here is some rice, because I think rice really gotta have rice, right? So the rice that I made for this, I mean, if you had Thai sticky rice, it'd be great. But what I made here is jasmine rice. This is it's actually brown jasmine rice, and I figured why not, right? It's a nice healthy rice. But the nice thing about this, right, is you can smell the fragrance from the jasmine rice and all of the herbs and the lime and cilantro. I mean, this is going to be a really, really great meal. And I think it's one of those things that you can put together very quickly. They're all humble ingredients, things that for the most part, I think you have at home. And by the way, if you don't have the jasmine rice, again, don't let that stop you. If you have calorose rice or medium grade, go with that. Basmati works great too. So, this is the dish. We've got our Thai larb with accompaniments, and then we've got our jasmine brown rice. If there are no other questions, one thing I do want to mention is please join us next week. And we're thinking about what would be fun to do. Next week, episode 3, we're going to kind of do Western style comfort food. I'm going to do a pasta dish that has lots of, it's got some beef and pork and fennel seeds and have herbs in there. But we're going to try to show you guys how to make a really quick and easy one that has it's very comforty, very homey. And the other thing that I was getting a lot of requests for is kid friendly. And this dish is super kid friendly. And so fast to make, you make it, you can reheat it the next day. It's really, really delicious. Any other questions?
How many servings?
This is 4 healthy servings, I would say. If you're doing like Whole30, maybe 6 servings.
And can you show us how to serve it?
Yeah, sure.
And can you remind us, did you drain the fat from the turkey before you added the fish stock?
That is a very good question. So the turkey that I'm using was 93% lean, only had 7% fat. So there was virtually no fat in the turkey to start with, and it didn't need draining. Now, if you're going to use pork, you could put on the dish the rice, or you can put it in a separate bowl. But if you're going to use pork that maybe had 20% fat, you might have some of that coming off. And the whole fat thing is a personal preference, right? To me, fat is flavor. If it didn't look really, really greasy, I might leave it in. But in this particular dish, I did not drain anything off because it didn't need to be drained.
Could you wrap this in rice paper, like do a summer roll style?
That's a good, you probably could, but you would probably have to make this and cool it. And if you're going to do that version, you definitely want it to be lean, because if it's cool and there's fat in it, then it starts to just feel funny in your mouth because of the coagulated grease.
Would you serve this with a sauce for dipping?
I don't serve it with a sauce. I just serve it with the lime, and I think it's got so much flavor already from the herbs and everything that's in there.
Do you have a favorite brand of fish stock?
The one that I have here is, by the way, for me a little bit goes a long way. It's the Tiparos, I think that's how you say it, right? But there's another brand out there that's really good, Magic Chef, I think it's called. Really good. I think they're, for the most part, they're all really good, but that's the one I typically use the most. So here's a example of what you could do, and
when would you use the red Thai chili?
I got some in there. I put some right now. It's right there.
So you would.
I sprinkled some on top.
Oh, what about the red chili sauce?
That's coming up.
Oh. Okay.
So I would typically eat it like this because I'm too impatient to make a wrap. However, you can make a wrap, so I'll do one for you.
Do you ever quickly blanch the cabbage leaves?
I don't, because the thing what's good about this is you want that texture, you want that really big crunch, and the thing about the dish, I think the theme here is fresh, right? So that's kind of what the experience that I'm looking for here. I love cilantro, so I'm gonna put a piece there. I'll put a little cucumber here. And then I'm gonna squeeze some lime. And then we're gonna put a little bit of fish sauce. I'm sorry, here's the Sriracha. Sriracha I'm using, yep.
The Maika Sriracha.
Yep. And then we're gonna go in for a bite. Are there any other questions that I can answer right now before I go into this bite? And then we're gonna sign off.
We just have a request for next time.
Sure.
Someone wants to learn how to make mandu.
Can think about that. We actually have a video on foodland.com if you want to jump ahead and watch that. So it is on foodland.com. I promise you it's a good recipe. It works.
Take a bite and tell us how it tastes.
All right, I'm going to take a bite. I'm going to tell you it tastes great because once I take the bite, it's going to be, I can't talk, but it's going to taste awesome. I'll see you next time. Home cooking with Foodland. Pasta next week. Homey, kid-friendly, and we'll have a good time. Cheers.